Hi, my name is Michael Ritchie, and I'd like to introduce you to AdminExile. This is just a brief video, kind of shows some of the capabilities and basic configuration and installation. So we're going to start off with the Joomla admin backend. Assuming you have one and you're already logged in, you'll go to Extensions and Manage and Install, and then from here you'll browse your file system and locate the AdminExile download file. Once selected, upload and install, and it should present you pretty quickly with this successful installation message. Now at this point it's installed, but you are not protected. You'll need to go to Extensions, Plugins, and search for AdminExile, which I've already done here. It is not a good idea to just enable the plugin from here. You'll be protected, sort of, but you'll be protected with a URL access key that is well known. Everybody knows that AdminExile access key is AdminExile by default. So don't just enable the plugin. Bad idea. Someone's going to walk right through your door and they'll be able to access the login panel. They won't necessarily be able to get into your back end. That would require a separate hack, but if you leave the access key as AdminExile, you are asking for trouble. So the first thing that you should do when installing this plugin is change the access key to something else, something greater than 8 characters. You can defeat an 8-character password in minutes with a brute force attack. So pick something that's longer than 8 characters, just so that it presents at least a challenge for an attacker to get past this first password. So Butterbean. Now, you probably wouldn't want to choose a dictionary word, but I just put it in there anyway. So the second configuration option that you should choose is the URL key plus value. And when you enable this, then you'll notice that your URL here changes. So right now we've got just the access key only, and it shows administrator index.php !Butterbean. As soon as you enable the key plus value, it adds this additional piece onto the URL. It makes it that much harder to crack. Not only do they have to crack the first access key, Butterbean, but they have to simultaneously crack the second, which is the value. These things go together. They can't crack one and get in. They have to crack both of them to get in, and they have to do it simultaneously. So just brute forcing one isn't going to get them past this. It's just an extra layer of security. Some people have told me that this is overkill, and I don't think that any type of security is overkill. So your mileage may vary. If you think you don't need it, then more power to you. Good luck. The key value, I would suggest the same rule as the access key, something greater than 8 characters. There we go. Raven loves Butterbean. How about that? For all you Teen Titans fans out there, will know what I'm talking about. Now, you can take this URL and bookmark it, copy it, save it, whatever. The plugin will regenerate this every time, so if you forget what you put, you can always come back to the plugin. It will display this again. We'll close it and go right back in. It will display it again right there. So you're good as far as your configuration being stored and being able to reaccess that URL. There's another setting that we'll look at here a little bit later called mail link that'll help you get back to that if you forget it and you're out. Allow re-entry. This I added because of popular demand I don't particularly like this function, but you might. A lot of people do. Allow reentry when enabled allows you to log out of administrator and re-enter to the admin login form without entering the key value, the key or the key plus value. But it will only allow this for whatever configured number of seconds you have set here. So you could log out and then log right back in, but if you log out and you wait longer than this setting, then you will be required to enter the key and the key plus value. That was my fail-safe in order to make this a little bit more secure. The last setting is the redirect URL, and there are 3 possible values. If you hover over the redirect URL field label here, you'll see that you have home, capitalized home in curly braces, 404 in curly braces, and the last option is any complete URL beginning with http:// or https if that's what you're working with. Home is automatically calculated by the plugin. If you have it set to redirect to home, you don't need to know what your home URL is. If it's being done on a development server like I've got here, you can see by the URL I'm on localhost, working on just a development system. It will automatically determine what that home address is and send you there, so you don't have to type in your own address. If you're working on a development server, you can migrate these settings right over to a production server, and this will take over. 404 is a cool one, my favorite one actually. As soon as you enable 404, you get this extra configuration text box, which is filled with what you'll realize is an HTML document. And what this is designed to do is to mimic a stock Apache 404 document. It mimics the same doc type, the file structure. Here you'll see in curly braces URL and server signature. That actually retrieves the correct and valid URL and server signature from the server, so that we can make this 404 page look as authentic as possible. And this is designed to cause an attacker to think that they have reached a page that truly does not exist. And hopefully, if it's a human that's doing this, they're gonna be fooled, and they'll just go away, because that's really ultimately what we want. We want to deter attacks, and that's what AdminExile is all about. So, if 404 is not what you want, if you want to send them someplace, you could type in the address of maybe your own 404 page. Maybe you wrote an article that has a super clever thing on it, and you want to forward to that one. That's fine, that will work too. Something you may want to consider is forwarding them off somewhere that might scare them, like NSA.gov. That one's always fun. I bet a few puckers have occurred when I've set that setting. So default is home, and if that's what you like, then that's what you like. On the next tab here, we've got front-end restrictions. If you are a paranoid admin, or maybe you have just a certain way you like doing things, and you always keep a separate account that only ever logs in to the back end, this setting is for you. You can restrict individual groups from ever logging into the front end. So say, for example, you create a brand new group that says no front end. You could select that group here, and then any member of that group can only log into the back end. They cannot log into the front end. Kind of convenient by popular demand. Mail link. Normally this is something that everybody's going to want to set up and use. What this allows you to do is set obscenely long keys and key value pairs and not have to worry about remembering what they are. or another good use for it might be for a large company who has a lot of users who connect to the back end. If they want to make a change to their AdminExile key and key value, they could make that change, and any user who is unable to log into the back end could basically type in a special URL and have that link emailed to them. And if you hover over the enable email link, you'll see right here where it says trigger the email by visiting administrator email equals and the user's username. The system will automatically check to see if they're part of the mail link groups, and if they are, then that email will be generated and emailed to them, and they'll have in their email a link that they can click on to send them right to the admin login. By default, that starts off with super users, but like the front-end restrictions, you can choose any group, and any member of that group is able to access the mail link. IP security. This is one that's kind of complex. It can be even more complex if your system has the GMP library, which mine does. If it doesn't, you will only be able to handle IPv4 addresses, but if you have it, then you'll be able to do IPv4 and IPv6. So let's go ahead and enable it, and we take a look at the default configuration. It whitelists localhost by default, and it blacklists all of the known private subnet masks, the known private CIDR net masks. Basically, the idea behind this is that for a live production server on the internet that's not part of an intranet or doesn't have any of these networks connected to it, you should never see any of these addresses connecting directly to your server. So I added those in kind of as a default and an example of the CIDR netmask capabilities here. So if you're not familiar with CIDR netmask, look up classless interdomain routing on Wikipedia. They have a great description. There are lots of tables that explain exactly how CIDR works. It's very powerful. You'll be able to block entire networks like a lot of us have the 192.168.0 home network. So this will block any address within that network, and that's not just 192.168.0. That's 192.168.0 through 254 dot anything. Okay. So it could be like a 24. If that was a 24, then it would be 192.168.0 dot anything. So take a look at CIDR. Really cool. It makes configuration super easy. When you have enabled IP security, this plugin operates on the allow before deny principle. Basically, if the person connecting is in the IP whitelist, it won't matter if they're also in the IP blacklist. Because they're in the whitelist, they'll be let in. So, if you want to allow one person in and block the whole rest of the network out, you can do that. While blacklisting, you'll see that there is a list of attempts and last attempt and options. Options allow you to clear the attempts and do other things. And you can add addresses. The system will actively prevent you from entering an invalid address. These three settings down here: email admin, email once, and email recipient. When someone attempts to access via one of these networks, one of these blacklisted networks, if email admin is enabled, then whoever is configured as the email recipient here will receive an email explaining that someone from one of these networks has attempted to access, and it'll tell how many different attempts they've made. If you have email once turned on, you'll only get one of those emails. If you have email once turned off, You'll get an email every time someone attempts to connect. So I would suggest leaving it on unless you like getting lots and lots of emails from your blacklisted IP addresses. I'll turn that back off. We're heading over to brute force. For those of you who are not familiar with brute force, look it up. It's a pretty simple concept. Basically, you attempt all possible combinations of a password sequentially. So say you've got a password of 54. The password, your whole password is 54. It would take 55 attempts to obtain that password, starting with 0. The brute force just starts at a low number and works its way up. It would try 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, all the way up to 54. And once it hits it, then it stops. Or hopefully, if they've programmed it right, their brute force stops. So what this does is it keeps track of the number of attempts made by any individual IP address, and once they reach the max attempts, then that IP address is blocked for a duration that's specified here in the time penalty. So I make 5 bad requests and I'm penalized for 5 minutes. Now what does that mean? That means that no matter what I do, any subsequent attempts will fail, even if I get the password right. If I get it right within this 5-minute penalty, it will still fail. The system at this point, when you are under a penalty, it ignores all inputs and all it does is count your attempts. The reason it counts your attempts is because there is a penalty multiplier. And right now the default is 1. That's really just a setup value. If you switch that to something higher, like say 2, then each time they make an attempt while they are in a penalty, their penalty is multiplied by the multiplier. So they make 5 attempts and they get a 5-minute penalty. On their 6th attempt, it is multiplied by 2. They now have a 10-minute penalty, and the time resets. If they make a 7th attempt, they get a 10-minute times 2 penalty, a 20-minute penalty, and the time resets. An 8th attempt, they have a 40-minute penalty, and the time resets. So you see, the multiplier can really make a difference on a brute force attack, so that they can never recover from making bad attempts. Even if in those thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of attempts they make, they actually guess the passwords right, they'll still get it wrong because the system will have them under penalty and it will just drop their attempt. So just like the IP security settings, we have email admin, email once, and email recipient. They work just the same, except that it doesn't email at every attempt. It emails at the max attempts interval. So if you have this email once set to no, then you're going to get an email every 5 attempts. If it's set to yes, you're going to get an email on the 5th attempt and not again until their penalty expires and they screw up again and end up brute force blocked. So that brings us to recovery. What happens if you have enable this and save it and log out of the account? It immediately drops you onto the home page because I had the home redirect setting. Ooh, you know what? I'm gonna do that again just so you get to see what the Butterbean equals Raven loves. Yeah, that's really weird. So we're gonna go into plugins here. I want to show you 404 because that is just the coolest. out, bam, it takes me here. So no matter what I do, administrator looks like a 404 page. And if I inspect it and I look at what am I looking for? Network, there we go. If I go back up here and I look at the headers, the response code, headers. You've got a 404 here. So it appears to an attacker that the page is invalid. In fact, resources. Yeah, you can't tell with all my other cookies. It doesn't even give him a cookie. So let's say we've forgotten the key and we didn't enable mail link, or we turned it off. What we can do is SSH into the server or FTP into it, whatever. What you want to do is go into your server file system. Go into the plugins directory. Oops. System AdminExile. And locate the AdminExile.php file. That's the plugin itself. That's where all the magic happens, right? We want to change its name. So we want to move it, or if you're on FTP, it's REN, I think. AdminExile.php. I like just adding a letter to it, so we're going to stick an X at the very beginning here. Oops. Okay, so with the plugin file renamed, the server can't load it. So what happens is it can't load it, it can't run it. So even though the plugin is enabled in Joomla configuration, once you change the name of that plugin file, it cannot be loaded and is no longer active, even though we go into the plugin configuration and it says its status is published. So at this point, you've forgotten the key. You could just open it up here and copy the key, or maybe you've got a different problem. What you can do in that case, you can just disable the plugin. Oops. Wrong window. Go back into your file system and rename AdminExile.php back to its original name. If you can remember to sudo, if you're SSH. Anyway, so it's been re-enabled. So now if I log out again, it should give me the 404. Yay. And Butterbean equals Raven loves, and it lets me right back in there. So it's big fun. I think it'll help you out if you don't have any other security measures. You need to do something. Someone is eventually going to try to break into your website if you're running Joomla or even any other CMS. If you're not running any kind of security, you really need to reconsider and put something on there. I created AdminExile because JSecure way back, all it did was the URL key. It didn't do the key plus value, it was just the key. And they went from free to a commercial paid extension, and I didn't like that. So I wrote my own. And since then it has grown to do all of these great things, and it will continue to be maintained and developed. And if somebody comes up with something cool or has a great idea, I want to hear from you, because I'm not opposed to adding features. Every feature beyond the URL key came from either my own brain or from other users that have thought that would be a good idea. I had a lot of people ask me for a white and black list. I had a lot of people ask me for something like the mail link. They didn't know how it was going to work. They just knew that they needed something. I had a lot of people ask me for the re-entry timer, and I didn't like it, but I had a lot of people ask for it, so I added it. If you've got an idea that you think would be good in AdminExile, I want to hear it, because I'm more than willing to make my products better. Thank you. Have a good day.